live, where news comes first. This is ABC-7 Extra.
By the authority granted to me by the state of Texas, I now pronounce you white and white. Lisa, you may kiss your wife.
It was a kiss they feel was worth the wait. The Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage, and the impact of that decision being felt strongly in the borderland. Good evening, I'm Maria Garcia. Welcome to ABC-7 Extra on this historic week. The country still coming to terms with this new America, where gender will no longer determine who you can marry. But in Texas, some say a new battle has just begun, a fight conservatives say for religious freedom. And cities like El Paso are already in conflict with state officials. The Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, today issuing a controversial opinion, saying county clerks, county employees, and judges can refuse to issue gay marriage licenses if it goes against their religion. He says it depends on the case, but that if other judges are willing to wed gay couples, those who would violate their religion don't have to do it. That's in direct opposition with a directive by El Paso County Attorney Joanne Bernal, saying when judges choose to marry people, they're acting on behalf of the state, not themselves, and the judges must be impartial, not biased. She says refusing to marry gay people would now be a violation of the Constitution. And joining us tonight, David Marcus with Join Us for Justice, an organization that advocates for the separation of church and state. And bringing to the conversation the conservative viewpoint, Robert Cormel, who founded Teen Center El Paso. If you have questions or comments, you can call us at 496-1775, email us at ABC7Extra at KVIA.com, or you can tweet me at MariaGABC7. Before our discussion, let's get a recap of the monumental week.
The four words etched onto the front of the Supreme Court, equal justice under law, apply to us, too. It's my hope that the term gay marriage will soon be a thing of the past, that from this day forward, it will simply be marriage.
The man behind the now historic lawsuit reacting to the Supreme Court's decision to make same-sex marriage legal in all 50 states. Justice Anthony Kennedy was the deciding vote in the narrow 5-4 decision.
It's been, a long time since, it hasn't been legal. So now that it came forward, we said it's time. It's time.
And in El Paso, these women, the first lesbian couple to tie the knot here.
The fact that some married couples do not live up to their high calling should not lead the government to redefine this unique and fundamental institution.
Reaction divided in the borderland too, though. Bishop Mark Seid said that marriage was protected for thousands of years, seen as a life-giving relationship and the foundation of a healthy society.
I would just respectfully tell them that my faith wouldn't allow me to participate in that kind of wedding. I certainly don't have anything against them personally. And
some pastors saying they'll refuse to officiate gay weddings. It's a different story for judges, though.
The Supreme Court of the United States says that the law is that unions of same-sex couples are legal, and I am to perform marriages without bias or prejudice, and that includes everyone.
But state political leaders say it's not as clear-cut. Governor Greg Abbott invoking Texas's Religious Freedom Restoration Act, saying, quote, no Texan is required by the Supreme Court's decision to act contrary to his or her religious beliefs regarding marriage. Even Attorney General Ken Paxton saying in a non-binding legal opinion that judges can refuse to marry gay people if it goes against their beliefs, though he admits they'll probably face lawsuits. County Attorney Joanne Bernal going against those state officials, saying judges are acting on behalf of the state when they choose to marry people and must be impartial. She says judges who refuse to marry gay people would be violating their constitutional rights.
Let's start our discussion now. Joining us, Robert Cormel and David Marcus. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we start our discussion, I want to first allow both of you to tell us what your position is on gay marriage and this week's ruling. And David, we'll start with you.
Well, I think it's a decision that I wish had come decades before. I don't see it as gay marriage. I see it as marriage. We've created a second class of citizens in our country. We've created laws that said they could not do everything that you and I could do if we were straight. And it just didn't seem right. So for me, I don't see it as government deciding or redefining marriage. I see it as government taking marriage out of the hands of government, which is what should happen. I don't think government should have any say in who marries who. I think it should be the decision of two consenting people, which is what a marriage contract is.
Okay, and Robert, same question for you.
That sort of contradicts itself a little bit, because marriage, I mean, if the government doesn't have any business being in it, they shouldn't be in it. The Supreme Court should not have made this. It's totally unconstitutional to make this ruling. The Supreme Court does not, it interprets the Constitution. It does not make moral laws. Moral laws are created by states, and they should be held up by the state. And this is why you have this situation with Greg Abbott. This whole situation comes down to the people that live in that state, and they should be voting on it. That's how it happens. You don't have 9 people dictating morality in a country. It's wrong. And it's not the democracy that we have in this country. It's not how things work, and it's wrong. It has nothing to do with whether somebody's gay or straight or whether you like them or you dislike them. The truth is that this is a power grab, and the Supreme Court has no business ruling on moral issues. It's not part of the Constitution. They're to interpret the Constitution, and that alone.
And the state has no business ruling on moral issues either. It's a religious decision. Religion shouldn't be involved in making laws at the state. Marriage has been based on religious law for centuries. Correct. It shouldn't be. No, religion should have nothing to do with who determines who's going to get married.
Well, when you don't define something originally, then you don't redefine it. Okay, the Bible defined marriage between one man and woman thousands of years ago. And so we come along and say, we know what's better, so we're going to redefine it. Separation of church and state should say, we're not going to get involved in it. The Supreme Court should have said, we're not going to get involved in this. This is a state-by-state issue. It's a county-by-county. If somebody wants to do that, they've had that, and that's why they've been voting over the last 6-8 years.
You're saying the same thing, though. You're saying different things here.
No,
well, you just said the Bible determined who could and couldn't be married thousands of years ago.
Well,
and
it defined it.
Okay, it defined it, but in
so
true separation of church, we shouldn't be using that definition if we're talking about separation of church and state, though.
Well, they shouldn't be worried about it because it's not a definition or something that's come up from the state or anything else.
Exactly. We shouldn't be worried about it, and we shouldn't be defining it, and we shouldn't be using the Bible.
It's already been defined.
In the Bible.
Been defined.
In the Bible.
Well, that's who came up with it.
Exactly.
Right.
And now it's time to take the Bible definition of marriage out of state law altogether.
Well, I'm surprised that you find it, because you should be saying we should make something totally different, something called totally different than the Bible, because we don't need it, right? We don't need the Bible. We don't need anything out of the Bible, right? Isn't that what you would say?
Not at all. No, not at all.
So
no, that's a common misconception. What we're saying is the only way to guarantee your right to celebrate your religion any way you choose, and the only way for me to guarantee that I have the right to celebrate my faith any way I choose is to make sure the state has no say in that.
Okay,
right.
I'm going to interrupt you guys for a little bit.
And the Supreme Court, correct?
I'm going to interrupt you guys for a little bit.
And the Supreme Court, though, right, David?
No, well, the Supreme Court just took it out of the state's hands.
Well, I know, but they don't
shouldn't have been in the state's hands to begin with.
They don't have any business ruling on it.
And it should never have been in the state's hands to begin with.
Okay, I have to interrupt you. I want to tell our viewers, I just heard from our director, our phone lines are not working right now. If you have comments, I want to give you a heads up. Please refer to them on Twitter at MariaGABC7 or email us at ABC7Xtra@KVIA.com. I know there are already phone calls, but we're having trouble getting those, so please direct your comments on Twitter or on the email account ABC7Xtra@KVIA.com or at MariaGABC7 on Twitter. Robert, a question for you. Let's get to today's development. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton saying in an opinion that judges and county employees can refuse to issue gay marriage licenses if it goes against their religious beliefs. The Supreme Court, though, ordering them to do so. County Attorney Joanne Bernal saying when judges took an oath to perform their judicial duties, they took an oath to be impartial and to not perform those duties with any bias. Wouldn't a judge be biased if he chose not to marry gay people?
This brings up a good question, because I noticed something on your Facebook. Eventually, this will all bleed into what about a priest or a pastor that does not want to perform a gay marriage? And I saw something on your Facebook that said, you know, this is not going to affect clergy. This will never affect, it will, because this will continue to bleed over. What Greg Abbott and them, they've decided on that, and that is totally up to them. If they want to decide that, I mean, we have basically a Supreme Court ruling that says you're to do this. Okay? And so there's not a whole lot, you know, that can be done other than they can say, hey, we're going to succeed from the union, and we're out of here as Texans. I mean, and file that and go forward with that.
And you know, there are a lot of arguments about what this will eventually lead to, right? What this opens a door to.
Right,
and we've heard that a lot. But the reality right now is that this does not affect clergy. So we're speaking specifically about judges who are representatives of the state. Would it be biased? Would a judge be behaving in a prejudicial way if they chose not to marry gay people?
I think that if it's against their convictions, and it's against their religious convictions, I think that totally goes against what they believe. And you're forcing them to do something that's against the Constitution. That itself is.
But judges don't have to marry people. They can choose to marry people if they...
Well, you just asked me that. And the truth is if it goes against somebody's conviction, why are we forcing them to do it? And this is the same thing before it was changed, the marriage. If somebody wanted to live together, they're welcome to do it. And nobody came to them and said, well, I mean, they're wacky, they're crazy people out there that'll say, you're this or you're that. But the truth is that the majority of Christians and people love people. Doesn't matter what their sexual preference is, doesn't matter what they've done in their life. But the truth is that they love them, they care about them, and they're not pushing Jesus down their throat. They're not making them do something. They were free to be together and live together and have civil unions or whatever. They didn't have to change or redefine marriage.
I want to ask you this.
Can I correct a misstatement?
Of course. Go ahead.
The priests, rabbis, pastors will never be forced to do anything that goes against their religious faith. That's an absolute guarantee in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And it's an argument that the Christian right keep throwing out there, and it's constantly been proven wrong. It's
constantly proven wrong? Like No.
Robert,
you're telling me that after 5 people made a decision to change the definition of something that has been the same for thousands of years.
Robert,
and you want to say here like whether it's going to...
No priest and no pastor will ever, and no priest or pastor or rabbi has ever yet been forced to do anything, even though it's been legal in states all over this union. That's number one. Okay. Number two, why are you so concerned about who's getting married?
I'm not concerned about who's getting married. Well, I'm concerned about the definition. The definitions of things matter. I don't know if you understand that.
Only if you're worried about who's getting married.
No,
if
absolutely.
If you love everybody, who cares if they get married? What's the concern?
It's the definition.
It's not going to affect you.
It's totally changed the definition of marriage.
How does that affect you?
How does it affect me? It affects families and kids the most.
How does it affect your family?
Because it takes something that is meant, it's like taking 2 + 2 and making it 6.
But how does it affect you,
Because
Robert?
it changes. How does it affect me? It affects the people and the young people that you're working with, that you're spending time with, defining something that has been important and of value.
2 minutes ago, you said you didn't mind if they slept together, if they lived together, they cohabitate.
What you do on your own is absolutely. But why?
But you don't want to have a legal marriage.
I don't, and I'm not for the definition of marriage being changed.
Robert, do you really
So
believe that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, David, I have
Yeah,
a question for you.
absolutely.
Let's get to the legalities
Okay.
here. Attorney General Ken Paxton, though, saying judges could refuse to marry gay people, saying, though, that it depends on the details of the case, and admitting that they could face civil rights lawsuits. Plus, he says that if there are other judges willing to marry gay individuals, then it would not be an undue burden on the gay couple if another judge chose not to marry them. What do you think about that?
You know, I'm not a lawyer, so let's start with that. You know, I'm going to say that it probably sounds like if it were not an undue burden, and you know, and somebody wants to get married and there's another judge available to marry him, go for it. Let somebody else marry him. I don't care. I think it's probably a fundamental mistake for somebody to be employed by the state who doesn't want to follow the Constitution of the United States as interpreted by the Supreme Court. So that's going to be a problem for these people in Texas, and I think that our Attorney General and I think our Governor have a serious issue with that. And they're coming out and saying that they support people not wanting to do it, not having to do it. I think it's a problem for them. I seriously do.
Okay, we have to take a break. This is from Nicole. The Constitution says there is to be separation of church and state. Therefore, the legality of who can marry who cannot be decided by the Bible. And that's Nicole in Northeast El Paso. That's our first email. Remember, you can reach us by email at ABC-7 Xtra at KVIA.com. You can tweet me at MariaGABC7. We have to take a break. When we come back, we're talking about the historic decision this week to legalize gay marriage across the United States. Stay with us.
Our nation was founded on a bedrock principle, that we are all created equal.
Obama this week reacting to the Supreme Court's decision. A lot of people saying that this week cemented President Obama's legacy with gay marriage, with the Confederate flag coming down in some places, and with the Affordable Care Act being upheld by the Supreme Court. Thoughts on that?
I think the certainly Affordable Care Act cemented his position, his legacy, I mean, as a president. I'm not so sure that the same-sex marriage ruling from the Supreme Court had as much an impact on his legacy, although it happened during his term, and he recently came out in favor of that. I think politicians and leaders have evolved over the years to come to that place where, you know, this has got to happen. It's an unequal society if we continue to prevent it. But I don't see that as much as an issue I don't see that as helping his legacy as much as Affordable Care.
I do want to tell our viewers, they just let me know that our phone system is working once again, so if you have comments or questions, you can finally call us. The number 496-1775, 496-1775. Thank you to our engineers for working on that. Ray on Twitter saying, does Mr. Cormel not understand that living together did not guarantee us the rights of a married person? And Robert, I know you said, you know, what they do on their own time is fine, but you're concerned about the definition of marriage. But here's Ray saying living together did not constitute us, did not give us the same right as being married. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I feel the same way about it. It's what a person decides to do on their own is their business. What they do behind closed doors is their own business. But when you start taking things that are very, very important to our society, pillars is what I'd call them, and you start knocking them out, you weaken our society. And I believe that when you take something like this and you start messing with the definition, you come along and you create a Pandora's box. And one example, in the Colorado Herald, they had an article in there that there's already a movement to change the definition of pedophilia. And we have, you know, when you start changing, one person says we can change these situations like the Supreme Court did with this. We're going to take out these words, or we're going to change this around, and we're going to make this an issue instead of making it continuing to make it a moral issue. You start screwing around with that stuff, and you're weakening the pillar that has made this country great.
David, I see you reacting
Robert,
to that.
Pedophilia? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Robert, listen to me for a minute.
You
can't believe that.
Really?
You can't believe that.
They're trying to change the definition of it. And you have professors that are teaching in our school today, okay, and they're marked in the article. You can read the article, and there's a movement to do that. Just like in before the 70s, there was homosexuality was considered an illness. Okay, so these things have constantly changed, and we will. When you start allowing people to change definitions of things, especially when they're pillars in our society, they will mess up everything. And what? And this is what Robert, I see down the road.
We got to get you a new news feed.
Well,
I got to tell you something. Okay, look, let's go back to another step. You're worried about your religious freedom. You already told me you don't have a problem if homosexuals live together. You don't have a problem if they're sleeping together. You don't have a problem if they do everything.
God has a problem with that, but I'm not going to go in there and say, okay, hey, you can't do this. I'm not.
But you don't want them to sign a marriage contract.
No, what I don't want is the definition, and I didn't want the definition or 5 people changing
forget
the
about definition for a minute. All right, forget about that for a minute.
Well, it's not just forget about it.
Let's forget about it for just a second. You can go back to it in a minute. You're talking about clearly violating the Equal Rights Amendment of the Constitution. You're talking about
what is equal rights?
The 14th Amendment.
What is that?
You're talking about no. You want to create a second society, a second class of citizens.
No,
yes,
not true.
Because these two people can't get married, but you can, Robert.
Wait, because
God said so.
Because of the definition of what marriage is.
Constituted by the Bible.
By the Bible.
Well,
and that has
the very founder of what marriage is.
No, let me give you another example. You are violating my religious freedom.
No.
Yes, you are.
How's that?
I am a Reformed Jew. I am a member of my Jewish religion, Reformed Judaism, nationally, for decades, has come out and said same-sex marriage should be allowed. We have gay and lesbian rabbis and cantors. We have been advocating for this for years. Okay. So let's say for a moment there's a member of my congregation that wants to get married, but Robert Cormel says no, because we should not have marriage between same-sex.
No, Robert Cormel didn't say that.
But you are now.
God said that.
I know, but
wait.
Your God said it, not my God.
Well, I don't know what God you serve.
That's the problem, Robert.
That's
the problem. That's what separation of church and state is all about.
No,
that's the whole issue. Your God says one thing, my God says another.
And
Whose are we going to choose?
Speaking of that,
Your God doesn't say that. Humans said that. When did your God say? Where in the Bible do you follow the Bible?
The same as you do.
Oh, okay. So where in the Bible?
But you used to make bagels a little while ago.
Where in the Bible? Wait, let me finish this. Wait, let me finish this. Where in the Bible? Okay, saying where does your God say that homosexuality is okay? Can you give me the?
Yeah, no, we don't. We say it in the same place in the same book
Where?
where it says you shouldn't be eating bacon and you shouldn't be eating meat and cheese. Yes, which you serve in your bagel shop. Who decided that that part was wrong?
No.
What God decided that that was okay now?
Hey, if you eat bacon and you're not supposed to,
I have to interrupt you guys. We have to move on. Here.
But don't change the definition of something.
State Senator Jose Rodriguez.
And your Bible doesn't.
State Senator Jose Rodriguez sent out a statement saying the Attorney General twists the meaning of liberty when he uses it as a weapon to deprive certain people of their constitutional rights. Let's be clear, far-right conservatives do not own the definition of marriage, nor do they speak for all religions. No church will be required to sanctify a marriage it does not approve of, but all elected public servants will be expected to follow the U.S. Constitution.
And those are facts. That's all. Those are facts. Clear and simple. Listen, you aren't a religious scholar, and neither am I. But let me give you one example here, and this is facts.
You wouldn't know if I was, but go ahead.
I probably wouldn't, but I'm guessing you're not. But let's say for a moment, why don't you follow certain rules in the Bible that are in the same book that talks about homosexuality? Why don't Christians agree that you should not eat meat and cheese together? Why do you eat pork?
Because there's one, the Old Testament is called the Old Testament, the New Testament is the New Testament.
Okay.
One's an Old Covenant and one's a New Covenant.
Who changed it?
Well, when Jesus Christ came and died on the cross for your sins, that's what changed it.
So Jesus Christ changed that?
Jesus Christ changed that.
Not you, not other scholars, nobody else.
No.
Jesus Christ came out and said, you can now eat meat and cheese together.
What he said is, all of those laws that are in... See, what the Old Testament was established for is so that you would realize that there was no way that you could ever be good enough to make it to heaven. And what Christ did is he came and died for the stupid things that you and I would do, for the sins that we've done.
Let's not get into your religious theology now. But I've asked the question because my point was,
But the answer is Jesus changed that. And when he came along, he changed everything. And he said, all those laws are wrapped up in two things. And you know what they are? The two things is to love others as you love yourself and love God.
Then you need to start loving others as you love yourself, including gays and lesbians. Then they should be as equal as you and I are, Robert.
When do I say that I don't love them?
We have to take a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to take Caesar from the Northwest, who's on the phone, and more of your tweets. We'll be right back.